I've used a lot of meal services, but Hungry Root truly stands out because it's built around the way real families live and eat. They don't just send meal kits. They personalize your grocery cart and meal plan based on your preferences and dietary goals. All I had to do was take a short quiz, and right away, their smart cart technology started building a cart that fit how we eat. Now, each week feels easier, like someone else is doing the thinking for me. I've been focused on cleaner eating lately, and I love that Hungry Root keeps out over 200 additives, including things like high fructose corn syrup and artificial sweeteners. Their meats are hormone and antibiotic free, and the produce options include organic and non-GMO picks. They also stock brands I already trust, like Oatly, Vital Farms, and Harmless Harvest. One of our favorite meals has been the teriyaki salmon with green beans, light, flavorful, and done in 12 minutes flat. Plus, I've noticed we waste less food, spend less time shopping, and even save money by skipping those impulse grocery buys. Take advantage of this exclusive offer. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/Dr. Meg and use code Dr. Meg. That's hungryroot.com/Dr. Meg. Code Dr. Meg to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/Dr. Meg. Code Dr. Meg.
On today's episode of Parenting Great Kids.
The prevailing idea is that if you put your children in diverse activities, then you are creating resilient children because they are, if they're doing like 4 different activities, then they have 4 different teams. They have to manage time. They have to be a little bit more disciplined. So the idea is that if you have diverse activities, your children will be more resilient. However, there is a tipping point. If you are putting your kids in too many activities, which I think is what's happening right now, it actually has the opposite effect. It creates emotional overwhelm.
Welcome to Parenting Great Kids. Here's your host, Dr. Meg Meeker.
Well, joining me today is Israa Nasir, a New York-based psychotherapist and author of Toxic Productivity: Reclaim Your Time and Emotional Energy in a World That Always Demands More. Welcome to Parenting Great Kids, Israa.
Thank you for having me.
A lot of times I have a guest because I want them to tell me what's wrong with me. So I like this. Because, I've noticed a big shift over the past 20 years as far as, parental stress. But I fall into that too. You just sort of get on this train and the train's going faster, 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 and you just kind of want to keep up. So as we dive into the book, talk to me about understanding toxic productivity. What is it? And how does it impact parents specifically?
Toxic productivity is the mindset within which we believe that the sole purpose of living is achieving outcomes. And while we don't consciously believe that, unconsciously, we are very focused on external achievement, validation from other people, and really feeling like we are like checking off all the boxes of the things that we're supposed to do. In this toxic productivity mindset, we become singularly focused on our outcomes, and the rest of our life doesn't feel as important. So we'll skip lunch to work through. We don't sleep well. We don't make time to move our body. We think joy and hobbies are a waste of time. Every time that we have needs to be optimized and maximized for a measurable outcome. And how good we feel about ourselves becomes dependent on that. So when it comes to parents, it's almost like it's like the perfect mindset to tap into both yourself as a parent, but also what you demand from your children or what you expect from your children. So it can kind of manifest its way in multiple formats. So as a parent, the way toxic productivity can really impact you is you can become very externally oriented. So you can become very competitive or comparative with other parents. Well, they're doing this with their kids. They're doing that. And this is happening for them. And then you start feeling like you need to do more yourself as a parent, right? And then you also kind of transfer that to your kids. So not only are you comparing yourself as a parent to other people to see if you match up, if you're doing all the right things, if you're using all of your resources, you're also putting that pressure on your kids, and you're comparing them to other children. You are telling them that they need to be externally motivated as well. And honestly, I don't think anyone does it to be ill-intentioned. I don't think parents are doing this because they want to be mean. I think the intention comes from a place of wanting your children to be successful, or wanting them to have a stable life and have opportunities and give them the things perhaps that you did not have access to when you were a child. However, in the culture we're living in right now, it's becoming very unhelpful, to the point it's actually impacting mental health, both for parents, but also for children.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very utilitarian, and it's very superficial. And by that, I mean, we kind of look at ourselves and our kids as machines that can produce, not as people who think and feel and wonder, and who have different dimensions to ourselves, which we all know we do. But to what extent do you think parents do that because this is where the train's going? This is where the momentum in our culture, our friends is. And so we just want to blend in there. Why can't parents say, this is what my friends are doing, I'm not going to?
Yeah, because there's a lot of fear. There's a fear of missing out. There is a fear of not setting your child up for success. There's a fear that you will essentially do this one thing that will ruin your children's lives irreparably forever. There's a lot of fear in parenting, especially nowadays. I think, in like just 2 generations of parents, people have become very much more emotionally aware. The parenting books reflect this shift. Parents are more interested in kind of like undoing the harmful patterns of perhaps generations before us. But an unintended consequence of that has been this unreasonable pressure for emotional health perfection. So parents are really buckling under, am I doing the right thing? Am I validating them enough? Am I giving this enough? Am I doing that enough? So I think there's just a lot of fear that is driving a lot of this behavior.
And it's interesting because we talk about parents wanting to help their kids be emotionally and psychologically healthy. And yet their focus is on performance, which is completely opposite that. So why do they tie emotional health to productivity? My kid is going to win a soccer game. My kid is the best dancer in her troop. Why do they think that is going to make their child emotionally healthier?
The prevailing idea is that if you put your children in diverse activities, then you are creating resilient children, because they are, if they're doing 4 different activities, then they have 4 different teams. They have to manage time. They have to be a little bit more disciplined. There is conflict resolution within the activity that they're doing. So the idea is that if you have diverse activities, your children will be more resilient. However, there is a tipping point. If you are putting your kids in too many activities, which I think is what's happening right now, it actually has the opposite effect. It creates emotional overwhelm. So striking the balance in giving your children a diverse experience, making sure that there are things or activities in which that children are striving for achievement, and then there's time in their calendar where your children are not striving. They are not doing things because of an outcome or to become better or to achieve something. That balance is really important. But right now, I think there was an article recently in The Atlantic that talked about how children nowadays don't have free time, that the concept of free, unstructured play doesn't exist anymore because parents are bringing in this idea of optimizing everything, including their emotional growth. So you're putting the same mindset of toxic productivity in the arena of emotional growth, which I think a lot of adults do as well. And I definitely talk about this in the book, is that toxic productivity can mask itself as personal growth. So there are people who take that same achievement-oriented mindset to improving themselves. And they'll be like, just reading self-help books and only always obsessed with growth and healing for themselves. And that has the opposite effect.
So as we talk about, kids are overscheduled, kids are burning out, kids are overstimulated, kids feel that they need to perform, and there's this productivity. And if that's being pounded into the kids, the parents are doing the same thing for themselves. So how do you break the cycle? Because it seems to me that first we need to tell the parents, you need to just chill out here a little bit. You're expecting yourself to have a clean home and do extremely well at your job and be physically fit and eat the right foods and buy the right stuff for your kids. And then you've got these kids are picking up on it. So where do you start and where does the big shift come from if we're going to find balance?
Well, I'll caveat this by saying I am not a parenting expert. I am somebody who knows a lot about human behavior, right? So the way I'm going to answer this is through the lens of that. And research has shown that children's regulation of their emotion and their nervous system and even their emotional awareness is directly impacted by how well their primary caregiver regulates their emotions. So you could be saying all the things, but if you are very dysregulated as a parent, your child will automatically absorb that. So in order to break the cycle, I think parents have to be very intentional about emotional regulation. Their own emotional regulation. So when the neighbor's kid gets a scholarship and your emotions get activated because you're like, oh my gosh, my kid's going to get left behind. Like, where did I fail as a parent? Like, why is my child struggling? What happens is you transfer that panic onto your child. So the break will happen when you learn as a parent to recognize when you are going into this cycle and learn how to regulate your emotions. And in order to do that, we have to know how to identify difficult emotions in our body. So I think for parents, like, it requires them to do some of their own emotional work.
Which means I would imagine it's going to lead to them leading a more balanced life. And in order to do that, they're going to have to give up some things, right? Because we've only all got 24 hours in a day. And if they expect themselves to perform perfectly in, 5 different arenas, something's going to have to give, I would think, in order for them to relax. We say that kids don't have any playtime. Parents don't have playtime either.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things they're just not relaxed. So we know why parents may not want their kids to back off on their activities because they're afraid kids are going to miss out or they're going to miss an opportunity for their kid. Why are parents afraid to back off and give themselves some quiet time, margin, and calm time?
Well, I would say it's the same thing. They are also afraid of missing out on opportunity. Like, the toxic productivity mindset really feeds off of fear of being left behind, fear of not being good enough, fear of other people perceiving you in a certain way. There's a lot of fear of perception. And all of that drives humans to overdo and overfunction. A few minutes ago, you talked about how, you can't really find balance without giving something up. I think that people kind of inherently resist the concept of giving up because it feels unfair. And so when I work with people who are, struggling with finding balance in life, I always like to remind them that you're actually not giving up anything, you are reprioritizing. And that shift in mindset is actually really important. It's not just a pedantic like word switch. It's genuinely taking a different perspective on your life. Because when you give up something, it comes from a place of sacrifice without thinking through the impact it has on your whole life. But when you reprioritize, it requires you to do a life audit. It requires you to become intentional about, where am I setting my time? Why am I doing this? Do I actually have to be involved in these things? What will happen if I say no? What will happen if I say yes? Who am I kind of deprioritizing in order to reprioritize this thing? It requires this like active analysis of your time and energy. And that's really necessary if you want to find balance, because we react to the world. We are just reactive. Things are coming up. We're saying yes. Things are happening. We're going with the flow, and we're not really stopping to be intentional about it.
A lot of women in particular don't do well saying no because an opportunity comes up. Great opportunity. Our friends want us to do something really great. We get a promotion at work. Great. But our difficulty is what you're talking about is, okay, I've reprioritized and I am going to carve out time during the day to meditate, to take a walk, to whatever. And in order to free up time with that, I'm going to have to say no to these different activities. Don't you think that our hesitation to say no really hangs a lot of us? It has with me, because a lot of times people ask me to do something. I was, oh, that's easy. I could do that. I could do that. And before I know it, I'm mad at everybody I'm helping because I didn't say no. Talk about that for a little bit, if you would.
I think you are tapping into something that's so important, is when we start feeling resentful, that's a big sign that a boundary is being violated. And oftentimes, especially women, myself included, we violate our own boundaries because we feel so much fear of rejection, fear of a missed opportunity, fear of disappointing the other person. And a lot of these fears drive our decisions to say yes. And that's why I think it's so important to learn the art of the pause. For somebody who chronically says yes to things, it feels very scary to say no. So asking for time before you respond to somebody puts you back in the driver's seat, and you can respond, you can craft a message, you can really do that audit. You can look at your whole week and say, oh, wow, I've already committed to 4 things. Like, where did I think I was going to squeeze this in? And like, you can reprioritize, and then you can be more intentional. Another reason a lot of people struggle with saying no, even when they want to on the inside, is lacking the language for it. Especially women, we are not socialized to say no right from an early age, right? So many women used to be good girls. And so we actually don't have the language for it. And a lot of times, especially in corporate spaces, what ends up happening is, because corporate space is so genderized, what ends up happening is a lot of women will start to mirror a lot of like socialized male behavior and wanting to say no, and then they get penalized for it. There was recently in the news, there was a article about how a woman just started mirroring her male colleagues' email format and style, and she got pulled into HR for being aggressive. We have to learn how to verbalize saying no. And I always find it helpful to have stock phrases in your back pocket that you can lean on very quickly to just buy time, to soften the edge on the no, right? To say no and then yes, that's a really good strategy for anybody who's listening. If you struggle with saying no, it helps to add a buffer of a and yes. So thinking about a piece that you could potentially offer. So if your friend is like, hey, like, can you help me move? And you know you can't do that. Like, you just can't. Your weekend is jammed. But you feel bad, right? You can say, I can't help you move, but I can help you with S.
I've had so many parents say, Dr. Meg, my child is bright, but they're struggling in school and I don't know what to do. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. And that's why I'm excited to share K-12 powered schools with you. K-12 offers tuition-free, accredited online public education for grades K through 12. These programs let kids learn at their own pace with built-in flexibility that supports different learning styles and family needs. And unlike homeschooling, K-12 provides certified teachers who guide your child's education online. The lessons are engaging, the technology is hands-on, and your child gets real opportunities to connect with clubs, extracurriculars, and even in-person events. As a mom, a grandmother, and a pediatrician, I know how powerful it is when education meets your child's needs instead of the other way around. So if you're looking for something different, something better, go to k12.com/Dr. Meg and find a tuition-free K-12 powered school near you. That's k12.com/DRMEG, all caps. Some days, parenting feels like chasing moments that never quite land. You ask a question, they shrug. You try again, they look at their screen. And you wonder, why is this so hard? That's why I love FamGabs. It's a 70-card deck created by a child therapist who spent 16 years working directly with families, helping parents and kids break through the awkward one-word answers and really connect. The questions are open-ended, thoughtfully chosen, and designed to get your child talking and keep the conversation going. There are even bonus cards just for parents to help you build your confidence in your connection toolbox. If you've ever wished for a better way to understand your child or just to have more meaningful conversations as a family, FamGabs is such a gift. Search FamGabs on Amazon and use promo code Dr. Meg Pod during checkout to get 10% off your order. That's FAMGABS on Amazon. Use promo code Dr. Meg Pod and get 10% off your order.
So think about the thing that you can do. Like, can you help them unpack? Could you send over food for their first night? Like, can you help them find a mover? Like some piece that you can actually own. That makes it so much easier to say no. But remember, you're not saying yes to something that you can't do. You're saying yes to something that is very easy to do, even if it's saying, can I connect you to another person? Like, I wonder if that other person could, like, help them brainstorm a solution.
That's a great idea. Because I've been accused, like I just said, because I know, when I was in medical school, 30% of the class was women and 70% was men. And so I got very used to being what people would call overassertive, because I wasn't very diplomatic. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And there'd be a lot of pushback. But to learn to finesse your language so that you feel better about yourself and you feel better that you're not hurting a good friend, because that can happen too. A lot of good friends, for instance, if you work outside the home and you have friends who don't work outside the home, you have very different schedules, and they may ask you to do things that they would have time to do, but there's just no way you do. And so I love what you said, to say, no, but this is what I really could do for you, rather than, no, I just work too much. Don't you understand? I work from home all the time. Which is another thing. People think if you work from home, you're not really working. It's crazy. But I really love that. Talk about shifting mindsets. How do we give ourselves permission to do that? And how do we shift that mindset? Because that's hard.
It's so hard. It's something that I really had to work on maybe a couple of years ago. And I think it still is hard, because the world is always offering you so many opportunities. A couple of things, right? First, I would really encourage people to become aware of their patterns. You cannot change something that you are not aware of. You might have awareness of being tired, overworked, annoyed. Those are all emotional things, but you need to be aware of your behavior patterns. So I would encourage people to look back in the last 3 weeks and make a list of everything that they have agreed to, whether at work or at home, in their relationship, right? You can have this mindset as a parent or in your romantic relationship, even your friendships, but pick an area of your life and reflect on the last 3 weeks and notice the type of things you say yes to, type of things you said no to, when you were overcommitted. Just notice the pattern. That's all you have to do. Mm-hmm. Once you do that audit, the pattern, and you reflect on it, the pattern will emerge. You might see that before a specific event or specific type of event, you're always feeling like sluggish, like you always don't want to go. And after the event, you don't feel better. So that's like a data point that, oh, this is something I could remove. Because you don't want to remove things willy-nilly, right? Or you might realize that you always feel annoyed going to this like one social gathering, right? Or this volunteer activity where you always leave feeling fulfilled. Now, that's an important one. That you don't want to just get rid of that, right? So I think the audit is key. And it's a very active activity. It requires you to think, how did I feel before? How did I feel after? So that's one way. If you're not there yet, if that feels too inaccessible, you can start by creating a small ritual in your day that gives you a sense of calm. And I know it's a small thing. And so people always say this to me. How is this small thing going to make a change in my life? My life is so busy. I have so many things going on. I'm so stressed. I'm taking care of younger kids and elder parents. How is a 5-minute break in the middle going to change anything for me? The truth is, when we start building in break time, like micro breaks, it has a compounding effect. When you are someone who's totally on the go, your nervous system is on morning to evening, it's probably not even going to sleep that is restful for you. That break gives you a time in your body and your mind to become familiar with downtime. And once you become more and more familiar with that, you are more motivated to stretch it into bigger time chunks. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's just about becoming familiar with the concept of a micro break. That's something that can be very, very helpful. And the third thing I'll say as a strategy, like a very tactical strategy, is to put a cap on the number of things you say yes to in a week. Whether it's in any arena of your life. Me, for my social commitments, I put a cap that I would max commit to 3 things per week, during the weekday. I was somebody who would say, because I live in New York City, there's something going on at Monday to Monday. And I was going out 7 times a week. It was
just hearing about it makes me exhausted.
Yeah, I was exhausted. I was unhealthy. I was dragging myself to places. I was in rooms I didn't really need to be in. I was not happy, right? So I told myself that I'm only going to say yes to 3 things. And what that did is it forced me to pick the thing I knew would really give me benefit. So it requires a discipline. So you can say to yourself, we're going to commit to 1 adult thing, 2 things for the kids, 1 thing for the family, max. And so you have to do that negotiation.
Kids are going to complain. That's okay. Kids are going to complain, but that's exactly what we do with our kids. We have 4 kids. And at the time, I was working part-time. My husband was working like a crazy man because we were establishing our own medical practice. And I remember saying to the kids, all I can handle is each of you having 1 extracurricular activity outside of school, because that meant I was driving at least 4 places after school for somebody. And then in addition, we had playtime and other kind of stuff. But I found if I went beyond that, I was a hell to live with. I had an easier time saying no to work things, than I do to personal things. But you end up saying yes to things, and then people come over, you do it, and then you're mad that they came over. And, you're resentful because you created a situation that made you agitated with people. So I love it. If you restrict what you're doing during the week, it seems to me that those activities and relationships are going to be a lot healthier. They say, oh, but I really need you to, it's only one time. How do you prepare yourself to push back when people say, you say, my three things for the week are filled. I'm not going to do that. What do you say when your friends sort of complain at you?
A couple of things. So this is essentially like where you're doing a case by case analysis of your life, right? It's really important to be flexible in the boundaries that we set. Healthy boundaries are flexible. However, those flexible moments are exceptional. They should not be the rule. You should not be overshooting your cap every week. When there is somebody who is very adamant or very consistent, it's really important to restate your boundary. And you don't necessarily have to give people explanations, but in friendships, I feel like it's helpful because a good friendship, it's helpful because it maintains a connection, and it can be helpful to provide context. Like, I know I would love to come this week, but we have all these other commitments and it's only going to run me down. I have to do other things for my personal self as well, and always punch to a future alternative.
And a good friend's going to accept it.
Yeah.
They're going to go, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry. I think that a friend that's more demanding and is sort of draining you is not going to accept it. And to me, that can be a red flag. Let's talk about self-worth and achievement and why. Well, we talked about this a little bit at the beginning, but I really want to dive into it a bit deeper. How can a parent sort of decouple their self-worth from their productivity and achievements?
This is a challenge for almost everybody because we live in a society that demands this from us, and we are rewarded for overworking. So the first thing I'll say is if you're somebody who struggles with this is not personal to you because of some deep deficiency in you. It is something that we are just constantly surrounded by. So that being said, one way to decouple this achievement and self-worth is to have things in your life that make you feel good, that are not achievement oriented. And I think that somewhere along the way, in maybe around the 80s, we as an American society broke off from community hubs. We broke off from volunteering. We broke off from hobbies. And we broke off from just being with others. So our society shifted with the advent of technology, the blurring of work and home life, and some of the political capitalist structures changed. And so we lost all of those things that human beings had been engaging in since the dawn of time. And so bringing that back is really important, because when that shows you is that you matter even when you are not achieving something or when you are not being productive. And I would say that if you are a millennial, you were never raised. You never knew that concept, right? Because millennials were raised in the myth of the meritocracy. And that was a prevailing culture of parenting at that time. And, a lot of millennials are now becoming parents and thinking about this. But I would say that's the first thing, is see if you can engage in a hobby that you are not trying to get good at, that is just for the process, being present. See if you can join a volunteer organization or a community club where you are not trying to excel. You're not trying to become the president of the PTA, but you're just showing up to be process oriented. When we are progress and outcome oriented, when all we care about is the next step and the end goal, we tap out of this joy. So in order to decouple your self-worth from achievement, you have to first learn that you can feel good about yourself outside of achievement. And the smallest way to do it is to pick a hobby. And research has shown that the impact of creativity on our brain is enormous. But we don't do creative things anymore, right? You just said it earlier in this conversation, is that parents don't have time for play. Many people join sports as a way to double up, like meeting people as friends and doing exercise. But then they want to win the tennis tournament, right?
Right. Yeah.
Or they really want to improve their swing in golf because the other person did it. But that's not the point. The point is for you to do it for joy. And I think that shift needs to happen. And if you can't commit to something that is weekly, commit to something that's once every 2 weeks. If you can't commit to something that's 60 minutes, see if you can do a 30-minute. If you can't commit to something that's outside the house, bring it in the home. Get like a clay set. I have like a little mini clay set that you just add water to it. I make random stuff for no reason. And then that's it, right? Like I'm not trying to become like a pottery person. So I think that's the shift we need to make. And I know that if parents are listening to this, they're going to say, no way. I don't have time to include a hobby in my life. Like, I don't know what this girl is talking about. And so there, I would challenge you to do the audit and see if you can take back 30 minutes every 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Well, and what I love about setting aside that time and taking the audit and saying, okay, I'm going to give myself permission for these micro breaks. I totally agree, because I've learned to integrate these, and people say, 10 minutes a day. That's ridiculous. It isn't, because in those 10 minutes, I have given myself permission to not do anything else. And just knowing that is relaxing, to sort of say, I'm off the clock. And, that's a hard thing to do in this day and age when our work is always tied to us. Emails, cell phones, texts, and everything. Particularly, for me, I'm in a smaller town and, people want to text and so forth. But just to give yourself permission to say, over these next 15 minutes, I'm going to pick up my book and read. I think reading is a great way to do that, because it takes you out of where you are and throws you into a really fun world, and it's relaxing. And so I would strongly encourage parents to do that. Your book is packed with so much information, and I think that parents can get a sense of that just by hearing you talk. We only have a couple minutes left, so talk to a single mom out there. I'm going to really make this hard for you. Talk to the single mom out there who's working full time, who's exhausted, burned out, trying to do everything for her kids. And she said, where do I start? I can't do all of this at once. What are the top 3 places, or the top 3 things I need to begin to do to start going down a different path?
The first is probably not I think everyone's situation is different. So I just want to say these are general statements. If the first one that I want to share might not be possible for everybody, but I encourage you to take a look to see if it is possible for you, is we are not meant to do everything alone. And, historically, people have raised children in community and in a village, which, again, that also changed, right? In the 60s, children were communally being cared for by their neighbors. And by the 90s, you didn't even know your neighbor, right? And so I think I would ask that person to take a look at their community and see where they can ask for help. There's no shame in asking for support and saying, hey, I'm having a little bit of a rough patch. These are the things I need help with. Which are some things that you can do? Right? Can you want to pick up and drop off, or whatever it is? Like, no ask is too small to take off your list. The second is I would ask that person to reflect on the demands that they are putting on themselves. Mm-hmm. If your children's laundry is in a pile and you have to do it for them and they are not doing it, what will happen if you just left it? Right?
I love it. Yeah.
What would happen if your child loads the dishwasher and it wasn't perfectly done, but at least they're doing it, right? Because what happens is when we get people to help us, especially moms, can get into the mindset of, no, but this has to be done my way, right?
There we go.
That perfection, yes, says outcome, but it's also self-imposed. if the outcome, if the goal is the dishes need to be clean, who cares the way it was loaded? But again, it's something that we get into this mindset. So asking yourself, questioning the demands that you're putting on yourself. So number one is seeking support. Number two is seeing which ones you can let go, which demands you can be mediocre in, right? How can you let things slide? So that you can put your energy towards the things that really matter. And so that is something that I would recommend for that person to do. And the last thing is, if you are working on this like jammed schedule back to back, I would discourage you from trying to start a new task, because that's asking for too much. Instead, there is this thing called habit stacking, where you are trying to add a small change to a pre-existing habit. So if you're the kind of person in this like single mom scenario, you're likely brushing your teeth at some point, right? Can you do a 90-second meditation right after brushing your teeth? 90 seconds right there, standing. You don't need a candle. You don't need a music. You can have right?
Yeah. Look in the mirror.
Look in the mirror and do it. Just stand there. Can you when you come home from work, if you are somebody who works outside at home, or if you've gone out for an errand and you're not coming back, see if you can sit in your car for 3 minutes and do a doodle, a craft, crossword, a mini crossword, or a meditation. Like, instead of trying to make time, see if you can stack one change, just one, not multiple changes. It's stuff like that incrementally grows.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. And I can affirm what you're saying. I know a lot of parents say, no, that's not good enough. It really is. If you're sitting in a line waiting to pick up your kids, turn the radio off, turn your phone off, give yourself that 10 minutes of just quiet, rather than, I need to make a phone call, I need to this, and I need to this. My guest has been Israa Nasir, and she is a psychotherapist in New York and author of Toxic Productivity: Reclaim Your Time and Emotional Energy in a World That Always Demands More. Thank you so much, Israa, for coming and sharing your insight and your wisdom. I think this is going to give a lot of parents a lot of encouragement. And when parents are encouraged, kids are encouraged. So thanks so much for your book and all that you do.
Thank you for having me.